Hello, I'm Super Orange Cat, and I watched the two-part premiere of Fena Pirate Princess last night on Toonami, and I've got my opinions on it. And I thought about how to cover this, and I'm just gonna do what I'd normally do for like South Park and Rick and Morty, and just kind of give some of the stuff I really like, some stuff I didn't like, and then just kind of elaborate from there. First thing I really liked is one of the first things you notice in anime, the OP. I really like the OP. I like the song. I like the animation used during it. And in that connection, ED, I really liked as well. It kind of fits into the whole trope that a lot of anime have where like the OP will be like energetic or like upbeat. And then like the ED is like much more somber, solemn. But at the same time, I like the music used in both. I thought the animation was pretty good. And that's another general thing. That was one worry I had when I saw the most recent trailer for Fena Pirate Princess was that some of the animation looked a little wonky. But in this episode, the two episodes, I thought it was good. It was very functional, and although it wasn't it wasn't really stylistic to like this utmost degree, it got the job done. And I think if you put a frame from this, and if you put a frame of like the setting of Fena Pirate Princess and compared it to frames from like other Toonami shows, I'm gonna be able to tell Fena Pirate Princess apart. So it succeeds in that regard. I really like that regard of the episodes and what I expect to see from the rest of the first season of Fena Pirate Princess. Other stuff I liked about this as well. To a degree, I liked the use of comedy in this. And for example, I liked it's weird because this kind of does go into one of the things I didn't like about it. I liked the fact that it was willing to get a little zany, a little wild, but at the same time, the downside of this was that they took it too far at points. Like, for example, let's take the first, well, second, third scene actually, where you have Fena up in like the tower talking to like her consort, I guess. And basically, Fena's talking about how she's gonna get out of this situation, right? Right. You basically have this whole situation where she's like, I'm put myself in a position that I'm gonna have to have sex with a guy. I don't want to if this plan doesn't go right, you know? And you already see in the previous scene men talking about like how they're into Fena, like Fena. Sorry, her name is Fena, not Fena. And talk about like, oh, I want to do things with her, being very suggestive. And another thing about that very first scene in a minute, that's definitely one thing I didn't like about it. And basically, like she's a woman that men have grit their teeth about. A lot of men have been chomping at the bit for, and she knows this. And this is kind of this existential thing. But at the same time, they play this tone off as I'm like, look at this wacky way I'm gonna find a way to escape. And the fact that our first introduction to Fena is her basically being this zany in a way does set up her character well, but at the same time, it sets up a character I don't really like, and I don't think a lot of people are going to ultimately like. And furthermore, if that, like the example you had Otto and Solomon, like the two old people from her past, come and save her from being taken to the penthouse. And for another thing, like how would she not know that the uber rich guy, that he's not going to rent out the penthouse fucker in, right? No, no, no. That's stupid of her not to assume that. But I digress. And ultimately they save her, and then they end up being like the same type of zany she is. And that's the thing. It's like, oh, good. There's three of them now. There was one 5 seconds ago, and if I just had one character that was like this, I could like this. I could be totally fine with it. But there's three of them. And fortunately, by the end of the second episode, it looks like those two guys are sidelined. We're not going to see much of them anymore. Maybe at the end of the season, at some ultimate conclusion, they come back and help save the day or something. But I digress. Not much there. And okay, back to another thing I like about this. I ultimately generally like the ninjas, like the seven people who were assigned by the ninja clan, who got helped out by her father to help her out and to help her out of the situation. I generally like them. Some I like more than others. For example, I kind of like Yukimaru because I literally wrote this down on my notes. He's the Thought Slayer because he had very clearly Fena into him from being a kid, and more on that plot line in a second. And he's just like, I'm not putting up with this shit. I'm not going to. And I like that because you need at least one character that's like, I'm not gonna play into the zaniness. I'm gonna do real ninja stuff, and I'm just gonna be a ninja. You can be crazy. I'm just not gonna put up with that. And also the twins. I kind of like them, but I feel like they're going to be in the same boat as Fena with me, where they're just going to be a little too zany for their own good, you know? And Karin, the female ninja, she's all right. I don't have a strong opinion either way on her yet. I feel like I feel like I'm gonna ultimately like. There's gonna be. I feel like there's gonna be a scene later on where I'm gonna really like her as a character. She's a lot like what's her name? The other the other part of Haruka and Fully Coolly Progressive, Jinyu, right? Where I really didn't like her the first time she appeared, but the more she appeared, and as the show got worse and worse, I started to realize she was the one saving grace for me in the show. And maybe Karin or whatever her name is becomes that for me. I don't have an opinion on her yet. My favorite ninja is I don't even remember his name. The guy who made the food with like the freckles. I'm hetero, but I think he's cute, you know. And yeah, generally, and also I like the main ninja guy, the guy who explained the plot to us. By the way, that's basically what happened. He is the king of plot exposition. You know, describing about the whole. Oh, by the way, your dad really wanted this prism. It means something we don't know. We know that your family has to have the key, so you're probably the only person that can handle this. And for as nonsensical, fully coolly progressive's plot got, at least Fena Pirate Princess, we have a basis for saying, okay, this is the general plot for the season, or this is the general plot for the show. Since it's been open ended whether or not this is gonna be more than one season, and that's gonna be dependent on how well the season does. It'll be interesting to see what the ratings are from this. So I like that. I liked how at one point they stopped. I mean, it's like I usually talk about how I don't like them stopping the plot, but like they stopped and it's like, okay, this is the goal. This is what we're working towards, and I'm gonna appreciate the show for that. That's something I ultimately like about the first two episodes. Other stuff I didn't like. There's a few weird plot holes kind of that have opened up. Not really plot holes as much as like kind of like the issue with the Promised Neverland season two, where there weren't that many plot holes as much as there were like just plot conveniences, contrivances that seem way too perfect. Like, for example, how did Fina start in the position she was? Like, okay, she's like part of this like big family, right? And like all of a sudden, like so, she's like Yoshimaru helps save her life, gets her in the lifeboat, and pushes her, and it's like we'll find you someday. And then like so she washes ashore and like she becomes a princess or something. There's something weird about this island where they like groom young girls so that like when they turn 16 or 18 or whatever, they get prima nocta with the highest bidder. And then like no, that doesn't work because she straight up admits, oh by the way, I put myself up for auction, so it's not like that. So like they don't explain this, and it's not like a one night like, oh, we're grooming this girl thing because the consort is seemed very familiar with Fana. Like they know each other pretty well. And she has a pet dog there too, which I mean, I kind of like the dog. I'm gonna be honest, that's a cute dog. I like that. That's another upside I kind of liked about this show. I like the dog. And then like, how'd she get in this position? And it feels like convenient because they want to create the situation where and this is kind of like what's that called? A trope where it's like specifically they do this a lot with female main characters where it's like they're about to face something that would like solidify themselves as being like committing to being feminine. Like, for example, you have her about to clearly lose her virginity and do so in a manner that she much rather not have. And then, like, no. And then she chooses no and ultimately chooses a life of adventure, which is what we're definitely shaping up for. End of the second episode, literally them being setting off to sea, and it's gonna be like that. And it's a trope. You see this a lot, you know. And another thing about like trope of strong female characters I want to point out I kind of didn't like is something that a lot of people, definitely in my comment section, pointed out the fact that Fina gave herself a haircut and like her first hair is very beautiful. Like the whole point was to like show a contrast between like her being like the stereotypical like feminine character and her like choosing this life of adventure away from that. But at the same time, it really like what her hair reminded me of, and I keep forgetting to make this analogy, is like imagine that you're like a 12-year-old future edge lord kid with mental issues, right? He finds his like 6-year-old younger sister's like Barbie collection, and because he's like so I'm an edge lord, he like takes a pair of rusty scissors and like cuts the hair. That's what it reminds me of. You could definitely tell a barber didn't do it, and obviously it didn't because you literally see her pull the sword out of its sheath. And then the next scene, you see her cut hair, presuming that she used the sword to cut it. So naturally it's not gonna not look like it came out of salon. It actually kind of reminds me too of like when like a housewife needing adventure in her life will like cut her hair because it's like fun, exciting, and makes her feel young again. And like the husband sees it and he has to keep saying like I love it because he does not want to face her if she figures out that he absolutely hates new hair. That's what I felt like with the senior ninja guy looking at it and he's like, you cut your hair. It's like he's trying to be polite. Like he's trying so hard. And ultimately, and that's the biggest downside of this is Fena herself. She is such a brat, and I know what they're gonna do. I know they're gonna try to like build like a contrast of like she's this immature girl who knows absolutely nothing about the world, and then like through this season she's gonna become more worldly, have all these experiences, and become like a swashbuckling pirate. That's obviously where they're gonna go with this, but it is such a pain to get through her the 2 episodes. Take her out of the 2 episodes, and this is a pretty enjoyable experience. But with her in it, it's just such a drag. Like you have the scenery, which is great. Background characters, some I like more, some I like less than others. I can definitely dig with that. But Fana herself is going to ultimately drag down the show. And that's something I'm a little worried about. And that's another thing about the general uh, if you watch the promos, if you watch the promos on Toonami, if you watch the ones online, if you watch the ones on TV up to this week in the United States, you're expecting a swashbuckling adventure. You're expecting pirate stuff. You're expecting people. You're expecting an action show. Actually, you're expecting something that's going to be very similar to a shonen. You didn't really get that, did you? No, and Japan actually advertised it the way it ultimately ended up being, where it's more of a shojo, where so much focus is based on basically on Fana being in love with Yoshimaru and wanting him to like open up to her. And I've seen plenty of anime, and a couple I've reviewed on my random anime reviews uh, series, where basically the plot is female character meets male character she loved as a young kid, and she like still's in love, like she still holds out for him for over a decade. Like for example, Oroshura, you had the pink hair girl who was obsessed over the main character since kindergarten, and also Blue Spring Ride. I thought of Blue Spring Ride a lot during this, especially the second episode, where you had the main character like try to get like the moody, dark, stoic character to open up to her to no avail. And it's a trope. I think Kiss, I watched that too. I don't think I did a review for that, but Kiss is kind of the same thing too. And I feel like in a weird way, it was production IG giving a big fuck you to Toonami. Like over this whole like, we want an action show, we want adventure, and they're like, damn it, fuck you. We're gonna add shoujo romance and you're gonna have to fucking deal with it. Because shoujo, we have absolutely nothing like that in Toonami. And that's the angle that right now sets Fana apart from Toonami, I think the biggest, you know, is the fact that it's ultimately more of a love story. Like you could say, well, Food Wars is kind of like a love story. Black Clover has a love plot line. My Hero Academia, I don't know if they got to that point in the anime yet, has a love plot line, but like those are like buried. Those are stuff that like occasionally gets brought up. Now this is at the least the secondary plot of the show behind the whole. Behind the whole. Here's the prism. Figure out what this means. Only you can do this. And I feel like for the standard Toonami viewer, that's gonna be a big downside. I don't mind it that much personally. I think I have a greater tolerance for shoujo more than the average Toonami viewer, so I didn't mind it too much. But if this just becomes a crutch, it's gonna be a situation. No, I'm gonna predict something that's gonna happen in the next few episodes. You have a situation where, like Yoshimaru is looking the wrong way, someone's about to kill him, then Fana does something and like saves his life. And then she's gonna be like, aren't you gonna thank me for saving your life? And he's gonna be like, good job. And play off as nothing. And it's gonna become this mental thing that affects her for like 5 episodes. Because if we're going to shoujo trope, something like that is gonna happen. Now, I feel like I can predict various plot beats already, which is not necessarily a good thing. But at the same time, with this weird mix of like pseudo action, very zany humor, you get a lot of zaniness. Again, you had Fana who's zany, you had Solomon and Otto who look like they're gonna be sidelined for the time being. They're zany. You had the two twins, I forgot their name, they're zany. So you're gonna have a lot of energy, and if you're expecting more of like a serious show, like something that's like really into this whole figure out what happened to my father thing, then you're I have a feeling you're gonna be a little more disappointed, especially since it's already been open-ended whether this is a one season or a multi-season show, which gives Production IG more of a license to kind of, slow play this. In many ways, I could see this turning into like One Piece, but like the absolute worst aspects of One Piece, where so much of the show feels like it should be canon, but then you look back and realize all this was really filler. And you have this singular goal which seems so elusive. And the more you look into it, the more you realize you're just further away than you ever been to it. And you're gonna have so many, like the episode, the preview of the show for the next one shows them like on a beach somewhere fighting the crew, the what based on the designs, like the wacky zany crew of the guy who signed up, paid, it was the highest bidder for the Prima Nocta with Fena, which lover scorned and whatnot. I like him as a character. I like how the one thing we're introduced to him is that yeah, he likes the penthouse. He's got like four women in bed with him, and he wants to add a fifth. That's king material right there. And then like you had this whole thing. Oh yeah, also the scene where he almost hits the concert wine bottle, and then like the gentlemanly prince who's clearly not wearing a fedora stops him. And's like, "Milady." Oh, by the way, another prediction. That guy, that military guy who they show briefly also in the introduction, he's gonna betray you. He's gonna be the guy who betrays you. He reminds me so much of that weird screwy prince guy from Frozen, who like after meeting for one day, Anna like got engaged to, and then Elsa was like, "You're a dumbass. You just met this guy." And then what do you know? At the end of the episode, at the end of the movie, Elsa was right because the guy just totally betrays him at the end. Spoiler alert: if you're really into Frozen, you hadn't watched it. It's been 8 years. You should have watched it by now if you're going to. But ultimately, that guy reminds me of that guy a lot too. And ultimately, you can hear from this, I'm kind of all over the board with being a Pirate Princess. There's some things I really think have a lot of potential in the show and make me, and I'm going to keep watching this. This is definitely something I really feel like on paper it can develop really into a great show. Although at the same time, I can definitely see various pitfalls that this show can jump into. And considering we're only 2 episodes and Production IG recent history hasn't necessarily been so rosy with how good quality the shows have been, I'm a little mixed. So I'm gonna be optimistic because I'm just gonna base on what I've seen and what I've witnessed already. You know, we're off to see action stuff can start as soon as the next episode, and maybe we get there. So ultimately, I'm gonna give a little bit of an olive branch and give this a 7 out of 10. Kind of my general average rating for like it's good and it could get even better. You know. So ultimately, what do you guys think? What's your thoughts on Fena Pirate Princess? Leave your comments, leave your opinions down below. There was one thing about this I didn't mention because there's no way I mentioned this you without without YouTube like completely ing on me, and that's based on the very first scene and what almost happens to Fena before Yokimaru saved her. If you watch the episode, you know exactly what I'm referring to. It is the very same thing that made a lot of people pearl clutch over Sword Online Alicization at one point, But if and if you're on watching this on BitChute, and by the way, I saw I'm gonna post this to YouTube and BitChute, then you're gonna be like, well, what is it about? Just look up the plot, you know. So leave your comments, leave your opinions down below. Did you like it? Did you hate it? Do you think this really has a good history? This has a good future on Toonami? Leave your comments and opinions down below. I am the Super Orange Cat, and that is all.